Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Jefff Nichols' The Bikeriders. It's finally out, star-studded cast. We're excited to talk about it. We're also taking a look at I Used to Be Funny, new Rachel Sennot film, much smaller budget from Ally Pankiw, director, writer, talking about that towards the end of the show. Stick around for that. We're going to talk about some upcoming trailers, some things you want to keep an eye on. That new Nosferatu trailer in front of Bikeriders. We saw it. We're going to tell you all about it. And before we get to everything, we're going to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Blumhouse's Megan is getting a horror spinoff, Soulmate, from Atomic Monster and Blumhouse. Soulmate with an 8. Or in the number 8 is in the name, like in Megan with the 3, right, Andy? You got it. I hope that comes
Yes,
across in the audio medium.
it's very clever, just like M3gan. Megan, of course, was the kind of campy horror film from 2022, which was a big hit, made for like $20 million, went on to make almost $200 million. They immediately greenlit a sequel, and now we have the spin-off in Soulmate. Megan, of course, is about a lifelike robotic doll that becomes self-aware and like becomes a killer robot movie. It's a lot of fun. And Soulmate is in that similar vein. It's about a man whose wife dies, and he gets this like robot to kind of replace her, probably by the same company that made Megan, and with disastrous consequences. I'm sure the robot will get jealous and all these things, and I'm sure it'll be just as fun. It just kind of replaces the premise with we will have a male lead and a female. Well, I guess another female robot killer robot. So they're building the Meganverse.
Yeah, Soulmate is going to be coming hot off the heels of Megan 2.0, which is coming out in June 27th of next year. Universal's already got Soulmate tracking for like January 6th, 2023. So they're charting these things out every 6 months, baby. They want a Megan movie in theaters. You're right. The Mithrigan universe is growing. I like this byline for the film. Soulmate's described as an erotic thriller. Exciting. Sees a man acquires an artificial intelligent android to cope with the loss of his recently deceased wife. And in an attempt to create a truly sentient partner, he inadvertently turns a harmless love bot into a deadly soulmate. Sounds a little like her, a little like Mithrigan. I gotta stop calling it Mithrigan, but like I like the Mithrigan. It makes me laugh every time. Got more from Blumhouse coming soon. We covered Megan Mithrigan. We covered Megan on the show. Well, we weren't too warm on it. I didn't think it was all that fun, but I know a lot of people that thought it was like one of their favorite films of the year. So for what it's worth, like obviously it's got an audience. Soulmate's probably going to do great. Do you think they're definitely going to show Megan in the trailer for Soulmate, right? They gotta have like a flash of like the Megan dance or something to tell everybody that this is in the Megan universe, right? From the studio that brought you Megan comes a new
Yeah,
artificially intelligent beast or something. Like
Megan's gonna be in the post credit scene, and then it's gonna be like I'm putting together a team, and then we're gonna get the Avengers of killer robots.
Yes, yeah, we're putting together a team. We're gonna grab what's her name from that Invisible Man movie that never went anywhere. We're gonna get everyone together. It's gonna be amazing. Our next story this week: how Francis Ford Coppola's embattled Megalopolis finally landed a distributor. We talked a lot about Megalopolis in this show. Hasn't come out yet. If you've kind of heard whispers or rumors that weird Adam Driver flick, well, we've got more. We've got a distributor. Lionsgate is picking it up, but though they may not be paying all of the tab, right, Andy?
Yes. So to remind you, Megalopolis, which I'm going to now call Megaflopolis, in anticipation, was this passion project from Francis Ford Coppola, where he sold off part of his fortune to finance this $120 million, basically pet project of a film. It premiered at Cannes this past May to disastrous reviews and rebukes, and people said it's a big mess. It's like it's really long. It's all over the place. It's super indulgent. No one would pick this up. No one wanted to buy this for distribution. No one wanted to be anywhere near it. And so Coppola has negotiated a deal with Lionsgate that he will pay out of pocket for the marketing if they do the distribution, which should hopefully mean that basically it's much easier for everyone involved to make money except for Francis Ford Coppola. If they just cover distribution costs and they don't have to pay for marketing, then the movie doesn't have to make very much for them to get their money back. So I'm glad that this has happened, though, because I definitely want to see this disaster firsthand. And by contrast, the Donald Trump movie with Sebastian Stan, The Apprentice, still hasn't really found a studio to distribute because everyone's kind of afraid of putting that movie out, and it's going to be very divisive. So it is. I am glad that this has found something, a studio to go out with, and we will be able to see it come September.
Yeah, it's also going to run on some IMAX screens, which is cool. Not all of them, but apparently they got some money that way. So at least Coppola will pick up a couple extra dollars over there. He famously retains ownership over all of his films, Francis Ford Coppola, mostly because he funds them himself, which is why there's various cuts of classics like Apocalypse Now. He also intends to exercise complete control over Megalopolis. I think it's cool for him to pick up the marketing bill because as far as I could tell in interviews, it seemed a whole lot like he thought people were going to see this thing and immediately want to buy it. And it was kind of the opposite. Studios watched it and were like, oh my God, everybody get away from this huge bomb. Which, if you're spending any time on Twitter or listening to this podcast, you'll know that there are some freaks out there in the deepest, darkest corners of the film internet that actually want to see it because it's supposed to be weird. Not only do I want to see it, I want to see it on one of those IMAX screens. So we'll cover it for the show. The best way to keep up with that is subscribe. And, when it come September, come Sunday, we'll talk about it. It'll be a good time. But in the meantime, Andy, I got to ask you about Megalopolis. You really think it's going to be a big flop? Big fat flop, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get people to the theaters these days, and asking people to sit down for a 3-hour passion project that everyone has described as being really weird and nonsensical and having too much in it, being too ambitious. It just doesn't bode well historically.
No, yeah. Budget's what? 120 million to make it, and then they're saying 20 million for marketing, which is low, by the way. Typically global marketing is like double your budget. 20 million is low. That is low, is cheap marketing. So they got to clear 140. I don't know, dude. Yeah, like Mad Max is only getting around to clearing that 168 number, and that's been in theaters for a few weeks. So yeah, I think Megalopolis is kind of doomed to fail. But hey, there's a lot of great films that have come out that didn't pop when they came out that we're still talking about over time. Huh? Blade Runner, The Thing came out this week, 42 years ago. I read just the other day. Hopefully that's true. That was kind of a flop when it came out. And who knows? Maybe Megalopolis will receive the same treatment. One more story this week from the box office. Inside Out 2 is unstoppable, dude. And it makes me question my ability to call the box office. I tell you, we've had such a good run here on Off Script. We're right every week. But this one, boy, it is a runaway success that even we didn't see coming. How did this happen, Andy?
Too many thoughts in my head. A $100 million second weekend for Inside Out 2. And that's domestic. So it made more than that overseas and has a total global cum of $725 million. This thing's going to hit $1 billion in like 3 weeks, which is crazy. We haven't seen anything like that in over a year. It's the biggest opening since Barbie. It has now surpassed Dune 2 as the biggest movie of 2024. It's one of the biggest second box office openings. Breaking lots of records, and I mean, people are saying it could hit 1.3, 1.5, 1.6 billion. So Inside Out 2 is headed for a legendary run.
Yeah, I really can't believe the success it's had. Like I said, Andy and I are usually pretty good at calling our shots here. But you know what? Sometimes one gets biased, and I'm not afraid to admit when I'm not exactly correct. But we're completely wrong. We knew it was going to do pretty good. We knew it was a safe bet. Disney's leaning on sequels. This is their strategy right now going forward because their last few originals from Pixar have not been quite the bangers they expected. Elemental ended up doing pretty good in the long run, but otherwise they've been struggling. So they're looking for a W, and what a W it is. Inside Out 2 is now the highest grossing film of the year. Lots of year to go. We're only halfway through it. And if you want to know where things are going, Off Script's the best place to do that. But outside of us, because that's not what this is, obviously Disney's in a good place. They're going to get a couple noms, probably for Oscars. They'll make that best animated list they didn't make last year. Like, that's where I expect the House of Mouse to be. That is a good thing. While I do love originals, like, obviously I'm glad to see they are performing well. Meanwhile, Bad Boys Ride or Die is still doing not too bad, right? I hear that movie's doing good.
Yeah, they're just short of 300 million on a $100 million budget. Another certified hit, and kind of a test of Will Smith's palatability to audiences. Audiences don't seem to care about the slap incident for a couple of years ago, so that's doing real well. We're probably gonna get a fifth Bad Boys movie with these guys still going at it. The Bikeriders, which we're gonna be talking about here in a second, did really well with a $10 million opening, which was on the high end of what it was expected to make. And I want to talk a little bit about Russell Crowe's The Exorcism, which
Good, me
was
too.
this
Yeah.
this exorcism movie that's very similar from a movie he was in last year called The Pope's Exorcist. And what's interesting about this is that The Exorcism was actually filmed first. It started in 2019. They had to stop because of the pandemic, and they didn't get back to it for like 4 years. So then they finished filming it in 2023, and then putting it out. So it's this like Frankenstein of a movie where he's strangely playing another priest. In this one, he's actually an actor playing a priest who's they're doing a play or a movie about The Exorcist. It's very like play within a play, very meta. I've heard it's not very good, but it's had a very strange production.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but poor things. It opened to an estimated $2.4 million, which is one of the worst wide launches of Russell Crowe's whole career. Got a D cinema score. It's a bummer, man. Look at like everybody loves a good comeback story, especially in Hollywood. Everybody would love to see Russell Crowe pop up in like a banger A24 feature, or like put him in something from Neon that's like really emotional and meaningful. And let's see it. Like, I think he's got the chops. Gladiator 2's coming back around. Why not? Right? Like, I think he could do anything, but yeah, we've got this weird timing with this movie he shot a few years ago, just kind of like stumbling out of the gate, and here we are with The Exorcism. Not sad I didn't watch it. Maybe we'll get around to it in October or something, but that's the story from the box office. One more I totally forgot, just because we slipped this in right at the end. This is actually hot news, piping hot movie news, right here on Off Script Film Review. We got to talk about these new pics of Superman. Just today, there were some leaks from the set of James Gunn's Superman regarding
Quote unquote
an outfit. Leaks, that's right. An outfit for Clark Kent, David Cornsweet, and Superman, which is, of course, David Cornsweet in the suit. Not too bad looking. We're going to go to our resident comic book nerd, Andy Draper. Dr. Draper, what do you know about these?
The photos look good. The stills are really convincing. The costumes look good. They have a good fit. They look different. It's much more of a classic look. We got the bright red trunks. We got the S on the yellow S on the back of the cape, which isn't consistent. The previous Henry Cavill Superman didn't have that. And in the comics, they kind of go back and forth on whether or not he's got the yellow S on the back of the cape. He looks good in the suit, looks good in the part, looks good as Clark Kent. We also saw some photos of Rachel Brosnahan as Lois, which people are liking, and a couple of other characters. Mr. Terrific, who I forget who's playing him, but he's a new character that say that again.
Eddie Gathegi, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which is another comic book hero, which I'm not familiar with, that's going to be introduced in this. And it's exciting because this is what James Gunn does really well. He knows how to introduce new characters that people aren't familiar with and make them household names. That's what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad. So I have no doubt that he'll do this with this too. The stills look good, and this is pointing to what I think is going to happen, in that we are going to get a teaser in the next month or so. Because with a big movie like that, a lot of times you start the marketing a full year in advance. So I think we're going to get a teaser for Superman sometime in July to kick off the year-long campaign for that.
I'm not a big comic book guy, so the Superman suit looks fine to me. Looks very classic, very all-American. Looks like Superman. Cornsweet looks great in it. The Clark outfit, however, I think is amazing. Not because of the ill-fitting suit, not because of the goofy glasses, not because he's holding a briefcase and a copy of the Daily Planet on his way to work. It's because of the hair. He's got like this Gen Z haircut where all his hair is like pushed forward onto his forehead. Which on the one hand, I think is a really clever way to hide his identity as Superman, because it's a different haircut than Superman wears. That's rad. On the other hand, I agree with this commenter here on Twitter, quote, "They still have time to change that wig." it's not too late, right? You can still fix it. Maybe they'll fix it in reshoots, but I think it's the look. I don't think it's bad. You know what? Like, why not? I think it's fine looking Clark Kent, fine looking Lois. It's looking like a fine film so far. I'm a fan. And speaking of fine films, anything else on this before we move to Bikeriders, Andy?
I'm ready.
Perfect. Andy's going to be taking the summary on the Bikeriders, so I will get out of his way for that. Andy, please, the floor is yours.
The Bikeriders. So this is the latest film from director Jefff Nichols, who did Midnight Special before. This was actually supposed to come out in the fall. It was supposed to be a big awards contender film. However, because of the labor strikes, specifically the actor strikes, that meant that they ended up delaying it because they didn't want to have to promote it without the actors. So now we're getting it in the summer. It stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy as the Bikeriders. Our story focuses around Jodie Comer's Kathy, who's just a regular Midwest girl doing a very thick accent that we're going to talk about in a bit. She goes to this biker bar with a friend and meets these tough guys. They're all drinking, they're loud, they're brash, and she meets Austin Butler's Benny. They immediately hit it off. They fall in love. They get married in like a few weeks. It's a crazy wedding. And then they continue with this club, which is this has been described as like Goodfellas on bikes, and it's not really that, because this club starts out as just a social club. These are just guys who like motorcycles and they want to ride together, and they're just dudes looking for a place to belong. And this gets more and more popular, and it eventually kind of takes on a criminal element. The whole thing kind of gets a little bit out of everyone's control, and it's kind of a big theme of the movie. But that's kind of our setup. A lot of interesting things, lots to talk about. It has a great cast, including not only Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, but Michael Shannon, Mike Faist, Boyd Holbrook, and Norman Reedus. So we're going to get into all that. Zach, what did you think?
Man, I think The Bikeriders rocks. I really liked it. I don't think it is a perfect film. I'm not even sure it's a top 10 film, but it's an honorable mention, man. Like, this movie's a lot of fun. And it's like dry in the places where the American Midwest is dry. It's corny in the places where the American Midwest has corny accents. And it's nostalgic in the way that like the 60s and 70s may be for a lot of cigarette smoking folks out there. But at the same time, it's just cool to see dudes on bikes. And it's really fun to see dudes express themselves in radically different ways, coming from different walks of life, whether they like live in Indiana and they just happen to kind of join up with the club, or they like ride in from California with a goofy haircut like Norman Reedus. Like, it's really fun to just see like a bunch of different dudes don the colors and hang out in a motorcycle gang for an hour, while Austin Butler represents this like spirit of freedom that Jodie Comer and Tom Hardy both desperately want and fight over like the whole movie. Like, a lot of fun. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I think it's really good in the theater. I worry when people watch it at home, they'll be on their phone in the second act, but I'm excited to talk about the Bikeriders. Where do you want to kick it off?
I want to talk a little bit just about our plot. Like I said, this has been sold by some people as something that it's not. It's not a gangster movie. It's not. It's not Goodfellas on bike. It's something so different, because it's a fascinating look at things like masculinity, all aspects, including toxic masculinity and other positive things. Like I said, these are guys just looking for places to belong, and they're just normal dudes. They're not tough guys. Like Tom Hardy he's a truck driver. He's got a wife and kids. Another guy, he's an electrician. Like, they're not tough guys, but they're like embodying what they think tough guys are. Like, they're copying the people they see on TV. Like, Tom Hardy is definitely copying Marlon Brando, and he's just doing what he saw this guy who's an actor acting like a tough guy, and he's doing that in real life. And then eventually it blurs to where you go from acting like a tough guy to kind of being one, as, you know, kind of fighting and violence starts to become a hallmark of them. Austin Butler is the same thing. He's doing this bad boy James Dean thing who just doesn't care. So they're all kind of cosplaying this whole thing, which I think is a really fascinating just topic. But it's also just, they really enjoy this time. That they enjoy hanging out with other guys and being tough and drinking beer and talking about bikes. And they don't buy Harley Davidson because that's, you know, that they're proud of having put their bikes together from different different other bikes. They call them chopped. And yeah, it's just a fascinating look at that kind of like the need for to be in groups in society. Michael Shannon plays this character called Zipco that's really tragic. He's just like he starts drinking and he's just like, yeah, they took my brother for to go in the military, but they wouldn't take me, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I got you guys here, and we're all like it's like he desperately just needs a family, and this is kind of the only place he's got one. So the fascinating themes in this movie.
Yeah, and the structure like plays opposite that really good, because the structure of the film, it actually opens with a title card where it's explained that what we're seeing in the film is based off a series of photos and interviews that was taken by an author and photographer who is not the subject of the movie, but is actually in it. It's Mike Faist's character. I don't recall his actual name
Danny.
in the movie. Danny, yes. Danny is present in the film, and he is taking photos and hanging out with mostly Jodie Comer and her friends, who plays Kathy, who is Benny's beau. She's the one who's pining after him. If you've seen the trailer, she's the narrator. She's got thick Midwest accent that people have been roasting her for online, which I think is all wrong, by the way. Not only is it great accent work, dude, I got family in the Midwest. I got white family in the Midwest, in Indiana. They sound just like that, dude. She nailed it. She sounds exactly where she needs to. All the accent work in there is great, including Tom Hardy, who does weird voices. But anyway, Danny and Kathy are hanging out doing interviews, and when you first see them in the film, they're like hanging out at the laundromat with all of Kathy's friends. It's all the gals. It's all the wives. They're all together, hanging out, chatting, engaging. And then we cut to the club, the boys, right? The bikers. They're at the bar and they're hanging out and doing their thing and being tough guys and drinking. And both of these groups have their own ways of like engaging and being social and talking with one another. And Kathy's is like bright and sunshiny, and she's out doing stuff. And like the clubs is like dark and it's night and they're drinking and screwing around. And like I like that the movie manages to screw in on both of these groups down to the very nitty gritty of how we express ourselves emotionally to one another and how vulnerable we're willing to be. We get this really great transition over the course of the film as we first are in the laundromat with Kathy, and then we move to her home, and her and Danny are upstairs chatting while she's I don't know, I don't even recall what she's doing, just hanging out, chatting with him. Then she moves downstairs. We move to outside. And as we're going, we're just starting to see more and more of Kathy's life. We're starting to get little glimpses of who's that sitting on her couch. Where's Benny, right? Where's Austin Butler's character? Is he still around? And then we get a jump forward to 1975, where more of the story is revealed from a future tense. And we get to see how Kathy has kind of ended up and where she's at. And it makes for like a really solid structure throughout the whole thing, because fundamentally the movie you're watching is the club and what's going on with them, but the narrative framing around that of Danny and Kathy kind of talking about how things got started and where they went, and man, how that club just went so bad, and God, if only Benny had gotten it together, like that all makes for a pretty good ride all the way through, at least for like a 2-hour runtime.
Yeah, the structure is really important, because we see, I guess it's about 10, 12 years, we see kind of the rise and fall of the gang, where it does kind of turn into what motorcycle gangs, I think, kind of eventually got to be known for, which was like crime and vice and all those things. But it starts off as a much more positive thing. I definitely wanted to talk about performances. Jodie Comer is doing a thick Midwest accent, but one of the things that I've realized, if you're going to do an accent, you can't just do the accent. You have to embody the entire, like everything has to do that accent. Your body has to do the accent. Like you have to look Midwest. You have to act Midwest, your mannerisms. And that's why I think it works with Jodie Comer, is that like she looks like this like doe-eyed ingenue that doesn't know what's going on. Like she looks like she's from there, not just sounds. And same thing with Tom Hardy, he went on record saying that like it's not about the accuracy of the accent, it's about creating atmosphere and mood and vibes, in other words. And he does it the same too. He disappears into this like real blue collar character, and the voice is part of that, but everything else about him is also part of the accent, the look, the way he walks, the way he holds himself. And I think both of their accents work, and I think they're both doing really good work. And she's phenomenal. I remember reading in an interview that Jodie Comer just phonetically wrote out all of her lines so that she would have like a guide to sound as Midwestern as possible all the time. So I think the performances are really top notch, especially by Jodie Comer, who's our lead protagonist.
Yeah, Comer rocks. Austin Butler is delightful, right? Smooth, sexy as Benny. Is a character who
Just smolders
genuinely,
the whole movie.
yeah, dude, yeah, and he genuinely seems to be the thing that like every biker wants to be. No job, no family, no cares, no worries. He never cries about anything. He's just a tough dude, right? Like who's just out there for the road. He's like the spirit of freedom. And Jodie Comer wants him because he is that. And she sees that in him, and she sees that he's special, and she loves him for it. But Tom Hardy wants him in the club, and later wants him to be much more involved in the happenings of the club because that's what he wants. That's the life that he wants to have. Because Tom Hardy's character, Johnny, has a family and he has a job. A lot of these guys do, and I love that about this film, The Bikeriders. That like a lot of these bikers, you see them and they're in the club and they're drinking and screwing around, but then they go home and they got like a wife and kids, right? Some of them bring the wives to events and they're sitting there looking like as bored as all get out. Damon Harriman's character, Brucey, who's a welcome sight from, God, he played Manson Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? That's him. Got the creepy eyes. Yeah, he's a Tarantino pick. His wife is like totally out of place. She got this big beehive hair, and there's this great, really funny scene when he's like sitting in front of his bike talking to Danny. He's like, "People just don't get us, you know. I don't get it. It's like nobody respects me, and nobody could think less of us." And his wife is like standing behind him, out of focus, like waiting for him to finish talking. Like really funny, and like I really love that the cast in this film is not just limited to like kind of our four bigs: Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, and Mike Faist didn't get a lot of attention coming off of Challengers. Michael Shannon's in this movie. Boyd Holbrook's in this movie. Norman Reedus is in this movie. Damon Harriman's in this movie. Like, and then the guys who you don't recognize when they show up, and you're like, oh, it's that guy from The Walking Dead, or it's that guy from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All those like bit guys in the club still have silhouettes and names and personalities. They all look unique, and they got weird names like Wahoo and Corky and Cockroach, which is a guy who eats bugs. Like immediately memorable features about even the characters that don't matter that much, which like grows the universe and makes this club feel like unique and whole and full. And that's not something I really expected when you've already got a couple real big names at the top of the cast list. Like shoot, Jefff Nichols, who wrote and directed this, he was doing his homework.
One of the interesting things about this is the inspiration that it creates, the legend of the club itself. Like I said, these are guys who are essentially cosplaying what they've seen in the movies, and they're creating it in real life. And then there's kind of this subplot where there's a younger group of kids who see these bike riders going through their town for the first time, and they're just mesmerized at the look, the coolness, the bikes, all of it. And they then aspire to be just as tough as these guys. And that we see that kind of ends up having kind of negative consequences, but it's this incredible, I think, in-depth cycle of like what we perceive in our world and through media, and then how we kind of recreate this thing that was never real to begin with. But it's a really interesting kind of look at that.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. And like I like that old send up, even the title, right? It's not called like the Motorcycle Club or the Harleys or anything. It's the Bikeriders, right? Riding bikes like young boys almost. And the movie does have a funny kind of generational sway to it, especially leaning in towards the end. Maybe if these guys had been home being fathers instead of like being out drinking and screwing around, and like maybe their kids would have turned out a little better. Like it's a nice sentiment. And ultimately, like I was really satisfied with the sentiment of the film overall. I didn't know where exactly it would end. Like I said, that framing device at the beginning kind of leads you to think it's going one way, and then I think you get a satisfying conclusion no matter where you're landing on it. But I really enjoyed like just how emotional this movie manages to get when it comes to dudes. Like you said, like Michael Shannon Zipko like has a really tragic story, but he's also like always got his juice, right? Like, which is really funny. And yeah, you got kids who like don't have father figures, who are like not turning out well and are making really bad decisions. And you've got dads who are looking at Marlon Brando on screen and being like, I want to be just like him. You know, my wife and family sucks. I don't want to spend time with them. Like, all of those are terrible things, and all of those are like really fantastic things to explore in a little 2-hour summer movie. I don't have much more to say about it. I do want to pivot into recommendations, but Andy, I did want to ask you, not to curb if you have any other thoughts, you should share them definitely, but why do you think Disney dumped this movie? Because we reported on it when they dumped it, and they sold it to another distributor, and I figured, oh, it must be bad. They must know something we don't. And having seen it, I'm frankly baffled why they dumped it. What do you think?
I mean, I think it was really poised for an awards run in specifically fall of 2024. And since they missed that window, it's going to be kind of strange to then do that run in 2020. I guess now is 2024. It was supposed to come out last year in 2023. I think they've missed the window, and now it's weird to promote it a year odd later. So they thought they would maybe just dump it in the summer, see if it gets some traction there. Because yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle if they're hoping to get awards, especially putting it out this early. Usually you wait till the fall, but yeah, I think it just missed the window, and they said, well, I don't think we're gonna make anything on this, and we've missed our awards run, so yeah, we'll just sell it to someone else.
Commerce before art. I should have known. Well, I think it's a good time. Any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend the Bikeriders?
Yeah, I would. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a fascinating look at this motorcycle culture of the 60s and how it's kind of morphed and corrupted it's into the 70s. Incredible performances from Tom Hardy, Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and more stellar cast. It's got a lot of good needle drops. That's where you kind of get those comparisons to Goodfellas. It's a really good time. I enjoyed it. It's not the kind of movie that I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. It's not a ton of action. It's not a gangster film. It's a lot of people. There's a lot of talking. But granted, it's on bikes and about macho kind of stuff, but it's a different kind of movie than a lot of people think. But highly recommend.
Yeah, I think it's a really good time. Would recommend the Bikeriders. Yeah, it's a fun setting and it's fun content. I was reminded of watching like Green Book in theaters, which is set in a different time, but it's not that different and still does this like nostalgic American Midwest, or even something like Bones and All, Luca Guadagnino's last feature, which also does kind of a nostalgic Midwest. Again, not like 60s, 70s, but still lots of like open plains, lots of sunsets, lots of cornrows or cornfields, and like that's all good stuff. But Bikeriders manages to bring like a lot more visual entertainment to that in the bikes and the guys and the way they fight and the way they drink and just the stupid antics they get into, but also like a surprising amount of heart in a big cast that I thought might be too overstuffed. And like looking at it, it's actually kind of perfect. It's fun whenever someone shows up on screen you hadn't seen before. You're invested in where things are going. Like Bikeriders is a good time, dude. Would recommend the Bikeriders. Bikeriders is solid. I know the Bikeriders is a lot of fun. And with that, we should move into our next segment. Bit of a technical pivot here I just want to talk about on the show, because the last couple times we've done this, I had some weird technical issues with the video. And if you watch the video on YouTube, you might have noticed like the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes didn't have any. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I say all this to say, when we're talking about trailers today, I'm not going to play trailer footage. I'm just going to like look at IMDb pages and show trailer stills. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about it, because if you're on audio, none of that means anything to you. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park. So we have a few new things in town. A lot of things actually just dropped today, but the big one that we're really excited to talk about is Nosferatu, Robert Eggers' follow-up after The Northman. He, of course, did The Witch and The Lighthouse. Previously, a lot of buzz about this movie. It stars Lily Rose Depp as kind of the I don't know if she's the main character, but she's definitely like the female lead. This is, of course, a remake or inspiration from the 1922 original creature feature vampire Dracula film. This played in front of the Bikeriders, and man, it was scary. It is a creepy trailer. It was so effective. We don't really see it much. It's all about mood. It's the dark streets of London. It's Lily Rose Depp like screaming and just lots of shadow. We just kind of see the major players like Aaron Taylor Johnson, Willem Dafoe, Nicholas Hoult, and we see just a glimpse of Nosferatu Dracula, who's just being called Count Orlok, who's played by Bill Skarsgård. We don't get a good look at him, but man, this looked great. Really creeped me out in the theaters. Good trailer.
Yeah, I was really pleased with the trailer for Nosferatu. It was rough because it got leaked on Twitter just a couple days before, and it was just like a cam rip, right? Somebody filmed it on their iPhone and posted them filming the screen for the Nosferatu trailer, which is quite dark. So it didn't really work anyway. And I'd watched like a minute of it on there and was like, no, I just gonna kind of watch it in theaters. And then the memes that came from people who went and saw Bikeriders and didn't have Nosferatu in their trailer package for one reason or another was brutal. And the whole time I was like white knuckling my chair, thinking, oh my god. The thing I'm most excited about my Bike Rider screening is the Nosferatu trailer, but the hype paid. It's a good trailer, dude. It looks rad. And I love that you don't actually get a good look at the beast. I'm sure there'll be another trailer between now and Christmas, but like where any other horror movie would reveal like a pretty solid silhouette or look, it's something of our monster. When it finally comes down to it at the end, he's just like this shadowy figure halfway down a hall. Because they don't need to show you what it is. That's what going to the movies for. Like, we're here for tone. That's what this trailer does. Mission accomplished. I'm a fan, dude. I think Robert Eggers' Nosferatu might be a bop. I hope so. Anyway, I was just revisiting Northman today and thinking
Comes out at Christmas.
Harshly judged it. That's right. Christmas 2024. Keep it here for more. Our next film, we're going to talk about, this trailer dropped today. This film called Heretic. So Heretic is a under wraps plot sort of feature. It is from A24. I can tell you what I've seen in the trailer, which is two young missionary women played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East are in a small town going around asking people if they've heard the good news, right? Have you heard the story of our Lord and Savior? Have you too been saved? And one day when they arrive at a mysterious house, they're invited in by a kindly old man played by a very dashing Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant, yes, that's right, Hugh Grant. And Hugh Grant invites them in, says, hold on, let me go fetch my wife and tell her about what we're talking about. And then he doesn't come back. And then they realize the door's locked and they can't get out. And the only way to go is to venture further into the house where things start to get weird. And then the trailer runs the title and it's over. I love that Hugh Grant is in his freak area. It reminds me of Danny DeVito on Sunny.
Sure.
Like he had his run doing big, cool stuff. And now he's like, I'm just picking like Paddington 2 and Cloud Atlas with the Wachowskis. And this is what I'm doing. It's weird and kooky. I think I'm low key into it, but I tell you, the mystery is going to matter a lot because from what I can tell, it almost looks like a Saw film without the excitement of Saw. What do you think, Andy?
Initially, I kind of rolled my eyes at this, but then I saw some more details. Like I thought this was a September release. It's actually a November release. And September is where we dump bad films, and November is actually where we kick up things for possible awards or holiday money. And this comes out in November, so I was like, oh, that's actually a better release date, and it is an A24 release. And so I don't really know what to think. It's definitely got a little bit of a campy look. You know, these two girls, he eventually is like, you must choose to go deeper into the house. There's one door says belief, one says disbelief, and they are going to some maze. It reminds me a lot of Barbarian, actually. We don't really know what's kind of going on underneath. And so I don't really know what to think, but I'm more interested than I thought I was going to be initially. Like I thought this was like, oh, it's like a bad September release.
Yeah, like I said, that mystery at the middle of that's going to matter. Is there an ooey gooey center at the middle of Heretic, or is it junk? It is written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who formerly are the writers of Quiet Place 1 and 2, and they also did The Boogeyman, which came out last year, and they did that movie 65 with Adam Driver, which was a big bad miss. That's like sci-fi. He's actually 65 million years in the past thing. So I don't know. That's Heretic, but it's an A24 joint. We'll probably end up checking it out. One more film, Andy. What do you got?
Red One. Well, we're in that era where we're actually getting advertisements for Christmas films, which is what Red One is. I got this confused with Red Notice, which is the bad Netflix action movie. But no, this is a Christmas film starring Dwayne Johnson, Chris Evans, and J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons plays Saint Nick himself, who is kidnapped, stolen from the North Pole, and the other assistant powers that be, led by Dwayne Johnson, have to go and rescue him. They recruit Chris Evans, who's the world's greatest detective, or something to that effect. And there's a lot of Christmas fun. Like they have like, there's Christmas magic, there's sleighs, there's like evil snowmen they gotta fight. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek Christmas action film directed by Jake Kasdan, who is best known for the two Jumanji remake films. He also did the Walk Hard comedy. with John C. Reilly way back. This looks like a lot more fun than I thought. It looks like a fun Christmas actioner. I'm a little excited about it.
Yeah, I am surprised that I am a bit more warm on Red One than I thought I was going to be. I mean, it seems a lot like Andy said, Red Notice. I think it suffers both in similar name, and admittedly the logo looks a lot like the Netflix logo, but aside from that, like just on its face, it's a Christmas film, right? It doesn't seem like it's going to be that hot, but it turns out I think it's got some legs, and the reason seems to be Jake Kasdan, formerly director of the Jumanji films, like Andy said. Like, it looks like a bit more of a globe-trotting adventure. They're moving around a lot more, they're going to different places. I think Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans are probably a good buddy cop kind of duo, right? You got Dwayne Johnson playing it straight as an elf, and you got Chris Evans as the sarcastic, affable, charming, roguish, all the things Chris Evans is, right? Like, and he's like, Santa's real? I don't believe it. Lucy Liu's in there. Like, she got to keep Christmas on track. Like, I don't know. Could be good stuff. I am surprised it's getting a worldwide theatrical release. I figured for sure this was a streaming joint, and I'm a little surprised to see that they're going for it big, but they got some talent on. It looks like a fun time. Like, for all I know, it'll do good. You know, we'll find out more as we get closer to it, I guess.
The other thing is that it also comes out on November 15th. So it's one of those things where it's coming out kind of a month ahead. So it just in time to hit the streaming service on Christmas Day.
That's right. That's a good point, actually. I didn't think about that. Yeah, get it, check it out now on Amazon Prime, right? Because it's Amazon and MGM who's producing it. So that's where it'll be. That's where we'll see it. Keep it here on Off Script for more about Nosferatu, Heretic, and Red One. But for now, we got to get to the other film we're going to talk about on this episode. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The film is I Used to Be Funny. So, I Used to Be Funny is the story of Sam, a stand-up comedian who's struggling with PTSD, which is a weird spot for a stand-up comedian to be in. Sam lives in Toronto with a couple of roommates who are very sweet, very, very progressive, very, very normal, down-to-earth, also stand-up comedians. But more importantly, Sam is an au pair in her hours when she's not doing stand-up. I was going to say her off hours, but technically those are her on hours because that'd be her job. And as an au pair, Sam not long ago took up a new residency at the Renner home with Cameron, a father whose wife is in the hospital, and Brooke Renner, who is a young girl who's like, I think she's supposed to be 14. She's played by Olga Petsa in the film, who is not 14 for sure, but they say it at one point. So, and anyway, things don't go great with the wife in the hospital. Tragedy strikes, and it's not long after that kind of a series of tumbling events lead to some real fallout with the family. Brooke runs away from home, and it's not long after that Sam realizes that she has to decide, despite her condition and despite how she's feeling, and that she's not able to get up and perform like she used to because of this event that happens towards the end of the film. So I don't want to say what it is here, but it is particularly traumatic. Because of this, she has to decide whether or not she wants to go help look for Brooke and maybe track down this missing girl that may have gone missing in part due to events that Sam feels she was involved in. So it sounds complicated. It stars Rachel Sennot. And originally, I had thought this was going to be a follow-up to Shiva Baby, which was from writer-director Emma Seligman. But it's not. This is from writer-director Ally Pankiw. And I've not seen any of her films, though I have watched a couple episodes of her television. Notably, she directed a couple episodes of The Great over on Hulu, along with some other things. And I love that show. So going into this, I thought, okay, this looks like stand-up comedy. That's what Rachel Sennot does. You got a couple other stand-up comedians in the set. It's in Toronto. It's modern day. It'll be a good time. It is surprisingly heavy. And I guess I should have known that going in, but I'm excited to talk about it here. Andy, what did you think of I Used to Be Funny?
So I was a little bit blindsided by it as well because I love Rachel Sennot. She's been in lots of great stuff recently. She was in Bottoms that we reviewed last summer or whenever that was. She's an up and comer young Hollywood actress, and she's really funny, and she's kind of known for those roles. So I was like, oh, she's playing a comedian. She's gonna deal with some personal stuff, so it's kind of a dramedy. It ends up being some pretty serious and heavy subject matter, but it is also very lighthearted. She lives at home with these other two friends who are also kind of stand-ups themselves, and so there's a lot of really clever and funny dialogue. The writing is really good. It's a complicated situation. Like Zach said, she is a or was a nanny to this very really wealthy, well-to-do family. All we know is something's happened, and they're all estranged. And the girl that she used to babysit overseas has now gone missing for several days, and everyone's super worried. All we know is that Sam in her condition is kind of not functional right now. She doesn't really leave the house. She doesn't have any money. She's not really paying rent. She's not right. She's not also not doing comedy. She's not doing any stand-up. She's not writing jokes. Like, her friends are very concerned, and they're trying to kind of pull her out of this. We also discovered that she had a relationship of 3 years with her boyfriend, which also fell apart at some point. And what what happened, the kind of fallout events are very slowly dropped over time, and so they lead into act 2 and 3, so I'm not going to get into the specifics. But like I said, it's dealing with pretty heavy subject matter, and pretty severe PTSD from traumatic events, which I didn't really anticipate. But it is powerful stuff. I think overall it is a real well-made movie, but I think it's got some problems too.
Yeah, I think it reminded me a lot of this HBO show. I don't know if you've watched any, called Search Party. It came out in 2016, ran from 2016 to 2022. They did like 4 seasons. Stars Alia Shawkat, John Early, John Reynolds, Meredith Hagner, and it's a hyper millennial comedy, right? It's this group of New Yorkers, these 4 friends who are all super progressive and very on their phones all the time and always online. And somebody in their community goes missing, and they go looking for her over the course of the first season. That's functionally what Search Party's about. And so watching this, it's a bit of that similar vibe. This young girl goes missing. Sam and her 2 roommates are kind of like, is she okay? Did you talk to the police? Maybe we should go looking. And all the while, like, you have a biting script with like really funny on the nose comedy. Rachel, like, Sam, I should say, like, is a very funny individual, even though despite the title, like, she manages to get across over the course of the film that she's a good time. That being said, the structure of the film, I think, steps on it a little bit, because it's this bit of flash forward, flashback kind of structure, back and forth. And originally, when we see Sam at the beginning of the film, she is in present day. Then we get a flashback to back when she first met the family, and then back to present day, and then back to when she first met Brooke, and then back to present day, and then back to when Brooke and her first went out for dinner, and then back to present day. And these jumps back and forth they're accented by color. I do want to say that the stuff in the past is a little bit bluer, a little bit darker. The stuff in the front's a little bit warmer. Actually, I take it back. Got it backwards. Stuff in the past is warmer and colder. Stuff in the present, when she has already suffered this trauma, is bluer and colder. But outside of that, like, it's that back and forth for a couple hours. And all I could think the whole time is, boy, this really feels like a boiling pot that's going to boil over into some awful thing I don't want to see. Which is pretty much exactly what happens, because you're building towards the event. Whatever happened to Sam to make her this way, to make her not funny, to hit the title of the film, I used to be funny. We have to find out what that is. And so the whole film, you're left kind of stewing with it. What could it be? And little clues pop up. Somebody will mention somebody's name, or she'll imply this kind of thing with this character. And then you actually get down to it, and dude, it's rough. It's rough. And it's rough for the right reasons. But boy, it's a tough watch. And I'm not sure the end of the film sticks the landing better emotionally than like that climactic low, like, of the movie, because the whole movie's building up to this thing happening, and then it actually happens, and it's like it's hard to come up for air after that. And I think by the time you hit credits, you're like, man, it's a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. And that's not a slide on the film, it's a slide on my expectations, because for such a funny script, I guess I'd hope for something better for Sam. I'd hope for a more ideal than what we actually get. It's rough.
Right. We've encountered her character kind of at rock bottom, like having endured some serious trauma, and dealing with the fallout, which none of it is. I think where I'm okay to say this, none of it is her fault. She's absolutely a victim in this situation. Um, and it's, it's still a struggle to kind of go on. I was going to say I was confused by the back and forth. It does a lot of back and forth and does a lot of time jumps, and I was confused a lot of times. I was like, is this the present or is this the past? So I do think that could have been made a little bit more clear. I did want to say the performance by Rachel Sennot in this role is really impressive. She puts the whole movie on her back. She really does. She has some really heavy emotional scenes in the middle and kind of later, and she also does like the kind of dry, funny humor really good. But I was really impressed kind of as it went on, and it made me wish that this movie had a bigger budget, because it's
I
definitely
think
feels like it's on a shoestring kind of film school budget.
Yeah, and I think it was shoestring budget. And like I said, Ally Pankiw is like formerly from TV, and I think that's how a lot of it was shot. I kept thinking while I was watching it, it felt like it was shot like an episode of Law and Order or CSI. Like they were just, you stage your actors on your set, like you put an actor on the couch, you put an actor leaning against the counter or whatever, and then you just have like a handheld camera to just kind of roam around and get coverage while they work their way through the scene, and then you put it together. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but not much, dude. And I think that's part of the reason like it doesn't look too different when we're jumping back and forth. I kept thinking like Sam needs a haircut, or Sam needs like something to visually distinct, like immediately tell you whether or not we're in the past or present. Like I said, the coloring in the film kind of does it, but like I was looking for that. I don't think people pick it up as subtly. Feels a little messy in the front, but overall not bad. I don't think, just not incredible. Like I said, I think it's small beginnings. As far as I can tell, it's Ally's first like feature film. I think she's got a lot of room to run, and I think Rachel does a great job in it. I got played by the title. I heard it was called I Used to Be Funny, and I thought, oh, Rachel Sennot's in it. It's gonna be funny. It's about stand-up comedians, and like that's really just kind of a part of it. That's not really what this movie's about. What it's about is a bit more challenging. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it's maybe a bit of a trigger warning for people going in who don't expect it or think it's just going to be like another Rachel Sennot comedy. It's quite heavier. She does a great job in it. Any other thoughts for recommendations, Andy?
Well, I wanted to talk about she is a comedian or trying to be one, and it's kind of what a big theme of the movie is, that she uses humor as both like shield and weapon. To mask what she's going through, but also kind of, she has a lot of really biting comedy about the struggles that women have in the modern world. But again, she's covering up pain, and she is, I think it's insinuated that she's going to therapy, she's on meds, like she's doing the things to get help, but it's still not always easy, even with all that.
Yeah, like even with supportive people in your life, like there's still it's not work that has to be done, but yeah, like quite a bit of personal development that has to come with that. And I do like that ultimately the film seems to have this message of like, you're not necessarily going to find redemption in like another victim story, you know what I mean? But like you might just find a little bit of like something you didn't have before, and maybe that'll be the thing to help you get through where you're at. And like I'm not sure that made any sense what I just said, but I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like it's not a bad time. I Used to Be Funny. I just wasn't quite what I expected, and I think sometimes the best films are that way. Andy, any other thoughts for recommendations?
Yeah, last thing is just it's a little bit too long. It is hour and 45 minutes, so it's approaching the 2 hour mark. Script needed to be tightened up a little bit. Could have been a tight 90. Pacing would have been a little bit better. Like I said, I think that this premise works really well, and I think it's an interesting script and premise. It just it needed more polish. Like it needed a bigger budget, needed a tighter script, and I think it could have been something really special.
Yeah, same. Andy, would you recommend I Used to Be Funny?
I would say save it for streaming. It's available to rent right now on VOD. There are actually some theatrical screens. I actually saw one at Texas Theater, funny enough. It like I said, it is really heavy subject matter. It is funny. It's a dramedy. Really good performance, central performance by Rachel Sennot. But it wasn't quite the movie that I thought it was going to be easier. But I'm glad that I took a chance on an up and coming filmmaker and a smaller film. They need a lot of support as well.
Yeah, likewise. I would save it for streaming, which is where it's available. I wouldn't be too stressed about going to see it in a theater. But yeah, if you've got a local one, maybe. I don't know. Hey, definitely support your local cinema if you can swing it, especially the small mom and pop ones. They need it. Like the historic Texas theater, but more importantly, it used to be funny, is a good time. I think it's good first steps. I'm interested to see what Ally does next. Rachel Sennot is always fun. I can't say it's her funniest feature just because some of the subject matter is quite heavy, but I do think it's meaningful in the best way. And if you're a fan, you couldn't do worse. And that's I Used to Be Funny. Andy, what are we watching next week?
Next week is going to be a double theatrical weekend, which is always tough for us here on the show, but we'd love to bring it for you. We're going to be looking at Kinds of Kindness, the Yorgos Lanthimos follow-up from Poor Things, which is a 3-hour, I'm not real sure what, starring Emma Stone, a bunch of other cast, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe. It's supposed to be a little bit like, been described somewhat like Pulp Fiction, like multiple stories. And we're also going to be taking a look at A Quiet Place Day One, which is, of course, the prequel film to the A Quiet Place series starring Lupita Nyong'o, which I've seen the trailer for 1,000 times, I feel like. So those are both in theaters this Friday, June 28th. And also, if you're interested, Horizon, An American Saga, Chapter 1, the longest title ever, Kevin Costner's Western epic, is also out this Friday. If you're interested in that, we will not be watching that from the show, but we will be keeping an eye on it, see how it does at the box office.
Like, no, I can't believe we don't get to watch Kevin Costner's 3-hour epic part 1. No, I'm fine with that. It's funny, like A Quiet Place Day One is notably supposed to be the scarier of these two features, but I am far more frightened of what I might see in Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness than what I'll see in A Quiet Place. The Quiet Place Day One looks tame to me. God knows what kind of horrors await in Kinds of Kindness. Dude,
horrors beyond our cinematic comprehension.
My God. It's incredible. I think it'll be a good week at the movies. I think they're both going to be fun. Quiet Place at least be a good ride, right? Get some popcorn, hang out. Anyway, if you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we had to say about the Bikeriders, if you I got hot takes on our Used to Be Funny review, if you have hot takes on Nosferatu or Superman, David Cornsweat, you could have cold takes for all I care. Just a take. If you want to participate, if you want to get involved in what we're doing here on the show, best way to do that is to send us any kind of correspondence. You can send us an email at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com, the old-fashioned way. You can write whatever you like in there. We might even read it on the show. You can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, where we've got reviews, news stuff, press interviews, all kinds of cool stuff going on the website. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, all the usual social media places you can find us. Like, comment, subscribe there, follow if you're able. We're on YouTube. Big things going on YouTube. You got to come check us out over there. We're doing great. We're hitting subscriber goals. Growth is happening. You wouldn't even know it. Right under your very nose, things are happening on YouTube over on Offscript. You should come check us out over there. All the usual audio places, Spotify, Google Play, iHeart, Media, Amazon podcasts. Boy, I'm really running out of gas here on my outro. You can find us over there, and you may have been listening to us there right now. So if you are, we really appreciate it. Hit that sub button. If you've already subbed, leave us that rating review. And if you've already left us a rating review, pat yourself in the back. You deserve it. All right, take it easy. Take it easy today. You're a hard worker, and I appreciate it. We appreciate you. So from all of us at Offscript, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.